when I say dressed, it's almost the exact opposite of dressed. So it's going to be pretty much undressed. When we say dressed, we mean head off, feet or hooves off, hide removed, and entrails removed. Okay? So we got a full-on carcass right here. Okay? So typically when we're talking with any four-legged animal that's going to be used for meat production, okay, they're all pretty much going to have the same exact muscle and bone structure. Okay? Obviously, steer or cow is going to be much, much bigger, right? Okay? So, but we do have the same muscle structure. Okay? So you're going to see, where's our flank steak come from? Anybody want to take a guess where the flank is coming from? Go ahead, right here?
Further back.
Further back?
Yes.
So no, you're right here is going to be more of that flank. So we know flank steak, what's the texture of it? Kind of tough, right? Okay. So we have motion muscles. Okay. So those motion muscles are going to be the ones that actually move the animal. Okay. So what's the meat going to be like there?
Tough.
Tougher. Why? Why is it going to be tougher?
It's been worked.
It's going to be worked more. Okay. So, you know, typically when we have those motion muscles, tougher meat, heavier grain. When I talk about the grain in meat, okay, it's those muscle fibers that we see in the meat. No, we have them too, okay? But the more prominent those muscle fibers are, that grain is, typically the tougher the meat's going to be. So if you take a look at a piece of brisket, okay, you're going to see like those lines in the meat, okay, that's the grain. But say like you get a piece of beef tenderloin or filet mignon, it looks really, really smooth, right? So that means those muscle fibers are going to be really, really tightly packed together, okay? And those are going to be more the sedentary muscles, okay? The ones that really don't do anything, okay? And we're typically going to find those along the back of the animal, the top, okay? So, you know, our ribeye, our sirloin, our tenderloin, okay? Those are going to be all up here, okay? So when we talk about cooking methods, okay, if we were to just take the carcass or the animal itself, okay, and we split it, typically right about there, okay, the top portion all along the back, okay, high and dry cooking methods, okay. Give me examples of high and dry, Joe. High and dry. Not dry aging, high and dry cooking methods. Okay? Tristan?
Smoking.
Not really. Okay? Smoking is not really a cooking technique. Okay? Brenda?
Roast.
Roast, high and dry. Gloria? High and dry. High heat.
Repeat.
What?
No, like the measurement.
Megan? Charlie? Grilling, yeah. One more, Daniel.
Stir-fried, saute.
Saute, yeah, okay. Now, lower portion of the animal, okay. Back down here, okay. Low and slow. Give me a low and slow, moist heat cooking method. Ren?
Brace.
Braise, yeah, okay. What else? Nothing else? Nobody else? Stewing? Kind of braising, right? Poaching is another one, okay? Now, typically when we have those really, really tough muscles right here, okay? You look up here by the shoulder, okay? Now, lamb, full carcass weight, live weight, or hot weight. This animal right here, probably about no more than 60, 65 pounds, okay? But still, that animal, you know, these muscles right here are moving that animal its entire life, right? Most lamb are going to be pasture raised, meaning they're going to be eating grass and they're going to be grazing in a pasture. So they're constantly moving, right? So that front leg, that front shoulder, that back leg, typically going to be a lot tougher meat. But tougher the meat, The what?
More flavor.
More flavor. Why?
It's fat.
Myoglobin. Myoglobin, right? Okay. Lamb's going to be a very, very dark red meat. Okay. Lots of oxygen in their blood. These are constantly moving around, right? Anybody a hunter in the room? Venison. Okay. You ever have to chase down a deer? What does the meat look like? What color is that meat? So dark red, it's almost purple, right? Okay. All those endorphins, all that adrenaline, all of that stuff that's going on in that in their blood system. Okay. It's, especially when they're bringing a lot of oxygen. Okay. That oxygen is going to attach to the proteins in the blood called the myoglobin, and that's what makes dark meat dark. Okay? Am I right, Miss Flaherty?
Go for it.
No, right. Okay. So, you got to chase that deer down. What does he taste like? Not too good, right? That's when you just make that. But when you pop him from the deer stand and he has no idea what's coming, it's a lot better, right? Okay. So, any animals raised, any livestock raised for meat production, probably not going to have as a rich or gamey taste as venison will. Okay, lamb is predominantly grass-fed, especially here in the U.S., but they'll be finished with grain. When we say finished, that means we're going to give them corn and oats and bran, just to bulk them up to get a higher weight. Okay, and we want to kind of tone down that rich, gamey flavor. A lot of people don't really care for it that much, right? Lamb, gonna have a distinct taste to it. You ever get a nosebleed? And they tell you to put your head back, right? You get that really metallic, kind of that blood taste in your mouth, right? Okay, that's the myoglobin and the iron in your blood, right? So, grass-fed lamb, pasture-raised lamb, going to have that kind of a really rich kind of a flavor. Most Americans don't really care for that because what are we used to? Beef and pork, right? That's farm-raised and grain-fed, so it's going to have a more of a neutral kind of a flavor, right? Chicken. What does chicken taste like?
Chicken.
Don't say chicken. It's just got a pretty benign kind of neutral kind of flavor, right? It's more of a texture kind of thing. It's what we do to the meat that gives it all that flavor, right? But then you have dark meat chicken. So it's better, dark meat or white meat chicken. Where's all the flavor? In the dark meat, right? Now, if we were to raise chickens for flavor, they would probably take, who's ever had rabbit? But, if we were going to raise chickens, like those free-range chickens that we talk about, it's going to taste a lot more like rabbit than chicken. The commercially raised chicken, commercially raised meats, going to have that real neutral kind of a flavor profile, okay? So, any questions so far? No?
I have a question. When they dress, do they do anything in particular with the head and the hooves?
The hooves are sent to pet food companies, like with horses and cattle. You go to any pet store, any feed store, you're going to find all dried, sanitized and dried hooves for chew toys for dogs, right? They can be, a lot of times they'll be ground down and used for, ladies, you're going to love this, cosmetics. Okay, so your makeup going to be made from blood and the bones and the other bits and pieces of livestock that they're just going to be boiled down. Okay, your lipstick, your chewing gum, going to be made from the hide. There's probably anywhere between 60 to 85 different medicinal uses for the blood, the bone, the marrow, some of the internal organ parts. of cattle and pork that are used. Okay, no vitamin K, so insulin. Thank you. That's the one. Going to be derived from bovine blood. Okay, the heads typically aren't going to be utilized much, especially way long ago, probably about 35, 40 years ago. There was that mad cow disease outbreak, and that's because of what we feed the animals. They'll take meat byproducts, the stuff that isn't used, and they'll grind it up. They were taking the heads and the spinal cords and the spinal columns, grinding it up and adding it to livestock feed, but it's pretty much the same. So it's bovine spongiform encephalitis. Encephalitis. It's close.
You were great. Stop looking at
It's been a while. Yeah. Or mad cow disease. So it's kind of like the cannibals, right? You eat yourself. You messes with your brain. That's not my department. I just take care of these guys. Okay. So we don't really use that. Certain cultures, I know in South America, Mexico, will take the head and boil it. Even down in southern United States, they'll take the heads of hogs and sheep and goats, boil them down, strain out all the
stuff.
bits, and then what you have left is one big globular mess of meat stuff.
Make head cheese out of it?
And we make head cheese out of it. Okay, so yeah, it's or if you're up in the Northeast, they call it scrapple. Yeah. Okay, so lots and lots of different uses. In the U.S., sheep and lamb were raised predominantly for wool production. Meat was a byproduct of the wool industry. Okay, but now in more modern times or more contemporary times, lamb has become a much more popular meat here in the U.S. Okay, all right. So full carcass. Okay, when we're talking about breaking down and butchering, I want you to think of a jigsaw puzzle that's already put together. Right? Our job is to do what? Take the puzzle apart. Okay? So we have a full carcass. I split it in half. Then I have two what? Sides. Right? Okay? From those sides, each of those sides, I'm going to get 4 what we call primal cuts. Okay? Primal cuts are going to be a very large section of the animal. It's going to be a quarter, and a quarter. So, okay? And from those cuts, those primal cuts, then we get subprimal cuts. Subprimal cuts, so I cut out the rib section, right? And then when I cut out the rib section, I take off the breast, I take off the flank, I take out the ribs, I take out the rib eye, or the top part of that, okay? Now I'm going to be using a bone saw, so I'm not going to get a rack of lamb out of this because it's very, very difficult to cut that nice rack of lamb. And this one would be really small anyway. So, and because we're going to be making sausage out of all of this, okay, we're not going to go for the rack so much, okay? But our first primal cut going to be here, the chuck and the shoulder, okay? Sometimes we call it a square because, well, look at that, right? Our second primal cut going to be the rib. Come right along there, okay? Third primal cut going to be the round or the leg. So from right back here down, okay? Then we have the sirloin or the loin. So 1, 2, 3, and 4, okay? The neck we're going to take off. I'm going to remove the leg, the front shoulder first, okay? okay, just so then I can take the neck off, okay? The neck, yes, Chuck?
What's the first part of
The chuck or the shoulder, okay? Different animals are gonna have different names. On land, because it's so much smaller, we're gonna call it the shoulder, but then we have the breast down here as well. If this were a beef animal, we'd have the brisket over here, okay? What I said? Oh. All right. Questions? Anyone? No? Okay. Well, let's get to work.
Did you get this from Cisco?
Nope.
He knows the guy. Or he knew the guy.
Well, you know, I saw him hanging out in the field, and it's like, well, you look lonely and cold, you know, and if it's cold outside, I want to bring him in and warm him up on the grill. Okay, so. I'm doing this a little bit differently because I want to open it up and show you some of the bone structure before I start removing the primal cuts. So, all right. So I've taken off that front shoulder. And I want to do that to expose a little bit more of that bone structure in here, so you can see the ribs right here. Okay. Now these ribs on pork, we have spare ribs, we have St. Louis ribs, right? So we would cut it right along here on pork or beef and get tablitas. ¿Entiendes tablita? ¿Sí o no? You don't know tablitas? Get out.
I don't speak Spanish.
Really?
Really?
Oh my God. Okay. Down here on pork, this is where we get our bacon from. Down here would be the belly. Okay. Then our spare rib. If I were to cut along here, that would be our spare ribs or country style ribs, okay? And then up here, I would get like the rack of lamb or the rack of pork or the rack of beef, like the prime rib roast. You ever see the big giant roast? Okay, so that would be back here along with a little bit of that loin coming off of the top part of the animal, okay? All right, so down here. Going to take that neck off first. Now this is one of my favorite cuts off of the lamb. This is what I grew up eating. My grandmother from Scotland. She grew up on a sheep farm. And this is what she would prepare all the time. It was really, really cheap because it was kind of if you go to the butcher shops, these were considered like the lower end kind of stuff, okay? But they would cut them across and she would braise them and just cook them down. Remember we tried the oxtails a couple of weeks ago? That's what that flavor is like. So you got all of that great meat that's in there, and when it's braised out, that's yummy. Okay? All right, so, okay, now I'm gonna split the carcass. I'm gonna come right down, hopefully, the center. When I worked in a slaughterhouse, this was hanging on a hook in front of me, and I had a big giant saw that I just kind of straight down and split the carcass. So doing it with a hand saw is a little more work. Don't make it weird. Pull it over.
Stop giggling.
Bacon. We don't use at all. It's forbidden to use by the USDA, okay, because of that mad cow disease, okay? We want to make sure that that isn't utilized at all, okay? Yes.
I know some meats like these guys you have like silver skin. Is there any silver skin?
Yep. Yeah. Silver skin or elastin, okay? That's the muscle, that's the silver skin is what holds the muscle to the bone, okay? So, and the collagen is what holds meat to the meat. So, you know, if you look right over here, oops, sorry.
It's okay.
Let's open that up a bit. Turn it around so you guys can see. So you'll see right in here, let's get rid of a little more of that tendon. Almost had a gusher. That's a femoral artery right there.
Chef, do people in town like the same amount of silver skin as like a cow?
Same muscle and bone structure, so same amount. No, it's all relative to size, right? But same spots of silver skin, okay? So you see right here, let's get that open a little more. Okay, so you see right here, that silver skin, okay? So that's holding that muscle onto that spine right there, okay? Down here on the leg, open that up a bit. See that right there? That's the collagen. That's holding muscle to muscle. Okay, when we are working in a slaughterhouse, what we do, we would take a needle about that long and put it under here, and it's an air hose. So we pump it full of air to pull the hide away from the muscle tissue. Okay, but then in here you'll see those lines right there. we're going to have collagen in between there, holding muscle to muscle to muscle. And inside there, we're going to see more of that silver skin. That's going to be what holds the muscle to the bone itself. Okay? All right. So look down here. This is what we would call the that piece going to be the breast meat, okay? Because it's coming from right over here, okay? The flank is going to be right here, this piece, okay? And then we have more of that breast meat right under there. So, but like I said, for our purposes this week, we're going to be taking the majority of this and trimming it up and grinding it. So I'm just going to remove a bunch of that now, and I turn it over. And remove that back fat off of here. I like working with lamb. My hands are nice and soft afterwards. The lanolin in the lamb fat is what they put in hand lotion and hand creams. So that's where they get it from. So my hands get nice and soft and tender. I'm going to come over here, take this piece off, come off of that rib cage. Okay. Take off that flank. It's called flank steak and skirt steak as well. Question?
No.
Oh. So here's what we would call the flank steak from the lamb. Very, very small. Okay, on beef, it's probably about 12 times that size. Okay, 12 to 15 times that size. Okay, but over here is where I would get my ribeye or prime rib, okay, or my rack of lamb. So I would take this and cut it down about here, okay, and all this we would just take off and utilize, we would clean that up, use that for ground lamb, okay, for kebabs or gyros, not necessarily for stock. Well, lamb stock gives, again, that very rich, deep flavor. We would fortify like a beef stock or a pork stock with lamb bones just to get that flavor in it. But we don't want that to be the dominant flavor. Most people wouldn't care for it, no. Okay? So here's our loin. And what Charlie was asking earlier, the silver skin. So you see this silver skin is right along that spine there, right? So that silver skin is holding this muscle to this bone, okay? So if we open that up, we come right down the spine. I'm going to take my knife, stay using just the tip of the knife. I'm going to slide down that bone so I can remove that loin. Okay. This would be the part where I would get my sirloin, my New York strip steaks from. So on cattle, that's going to be about that big, right? So if you butchered the deer, that's what you're going to see. It's fairly similar in size once we have the dressed carcass to a lamb, right? So come down off of there. That sirloin butt, okay? Top sirloin, going to be right here, okay? So we would have that piece. Come around that pelvic bone.
Chef, there's two ways to hold that knife, right? There's the surgeon's grip.
Yeah, well, I call it the surgeon's grip.
What's that? What do you call the other one?
The serial killer grip. You know, so when you're working next to a bone and you have to slide down that bone like that, I usually have that reverse grip on it. It's going to give me a little bit more control when I have to do heavier cutting. But when I have to do more precise cutting, I turn it over and I use it like a scalpel almost. So I get a lot more precision that way. When I need more brute force, I'll use that reverse grip. Okay? That's usually when I'm working closer to a bone or heavier tendons. Okay, Charlie, come here. See there? Right there? Okay, that's what we're talking about. See how that heavy silver skin right there is attached to that bone. That's the top of the femur, right there. Okay. So I come around there, and you can see how it radiates off of that pelvic bone right there. Okay, the pelvis. Okay, if I were to remove all that meat there, and that's a perfect example of what we're talking about there. So, see right on the bone here, see how heavy and dense it is? That reticulum, okay? So that reticulum, that casing on the bone itself, it kind of blends out into that silver skin right down here, okay? And the closer to the bone, the thicker and heavier that silver skin is. As it gradually moves away from it, as it's going down into the muscle tissue, it gets a little thinner and thinner and thinner, okay? And when we pull this piece off, that'll be a perfect example of what I'm talking about there. So we'll remove that whole loin. Now again, if I were going to cut a rack of lamb, I would leave that in, okay? And then this would be my sirloin. About 90% of the value of this carcass comes from right here. Okay, the rest of it's more residual, and we just look for ways to make our money off of that, okay? But the real high dollar, high value cuts are coming from here. Okay, so you got some of the rib, so you got your rack of lamb, okay? Then you have your loin, and then inside, once we turn it over, you have your tenderloin or your filet mignon, okay?
Chef, does 90% come from that because there's just not a lot of meat anywhere else?
Well, your yield off of a lamb carcass is not going to be very big, right? So out of a carcass like this, in usable yield, I can get probably about 80 to 87%, okay? But that's usable yield, but they're not going to be those really nice fancy cuts that we're used to seeing, okay? When I say usable yield, I'm going to get more for sausage, for, you know, further processed products, right? Sausage, gyros, kebabs, okay? So, the old man still got it. All right. Okay? So, but you see what I was talking about, like right there? Okay? So that's that pelvis bone, that pelvic bone, okay? And come around that. And again, if I were going to be fabricating this out for retail cuts, I'd be doing it completely different, okay? The only reason why I'm doing it this way is because I want you to see the individual muscle structure, the individual bones, okay, and where it's coming from. So that piece, like I was saying, that is where all the value is, okay? That's the high dollar, high money piece right there, okay? This is a sedentary muscle, okay? This muscle right here isn't really doing much except acting as a shock absorber, okay? You see where the spine is, right? Okay, every step that animal takes, it's going to jar down, right? And inside here, all the internal organs, right? You got the reproductive organs back here, you got the kidneys, the liver, everything else is back here, right? So in order to protect those organs, we have this meat right here. So it's really not doing anything more than acting as a shock absorber. Okay, so that spine and that backbone doesn't bang into those organs. Make sense? Okay, but you can see right there where it lies. Okay, and if we
Chef, how much would someone like this be at your local?
I'm sorry?
How much would someone like this be at your local butcher store?
Well, see, there's a thing. Lamb, because it's not as popular, it's become a lot more popular, but it's not as frequently used or consumed like beef and pork and chicken. It has a tendency to be a lot more expensive. So if you were going to buy a lamb sirloin, okay, probably anywhere between $22 to $28 a pound. Yes.
Is like the protein content
Meat proteins, per portion, per ounce. Not sure how many grams of protein. It's much richer in iron because of their diet, because of the amount of myoglobin in there. So, is it healthier? I think it's tastier.
So you're talking about a lot of obviously animals that live on land. Is there a similarity to animals that live in the water, like fish and sharks? And
So when we talk about seafood,
I know it's different. But
lightly. Remove that silver, and right there.
Hey,
2 for 2.
Chef G,
I'm sorry?
Could you use this silver for anything, or is it just?
No.
a little bit.
What you guys eat at school? The steak fingers and chicken nuggies. The Philly cheese steak. All that stuff is going to be this. Okay, so what happens is we will fabricate out all of our high value meat and muscle tissue. Then we'll take pieces like this and throw them into this big giant drum that's got like a sandpaper on the inside, right? And it'll spin. We got high pressure water being sprayed into it, and it just tumbles and tumbles and tumbles, and it scrapes off all of that muscle tissue that we make hot pockets with. We make any pre-formed, pre-shaped. Anything on there look like a dinosaur or a mermaid or anything like that? No. So what comes out of that drum looks like gray dryer lint, right? But then we wash it with ammonia and chlorine, and it turns into what we call pink slime. And then it looks like Play-Doh, and it's extruded out into dinosaur shapes and stars and alphabets and your chicken nuggies, right? Yes.
Is it safe to eat that like bleach and ammonia?
Well, I mean, it's ammoniated water, it's chlorinated water. It's used to sanitize and sterilize the meat. It's a negligible amount by the time it gets to your chicken nugget, right?
Basically, we're eating percent.
I'm sorry?
Percent food. That's what it sounds like.
No, it's real food. So, did you really think you were going to Jack in the Box and get a 100% Black Angus all beef burger for 99 cents and think you were getting this? No, you are getting this because it is 100% pure Black Angus beef-ish. We didn't say where it was from on the animal. We didn't say what it was on the animal. We just said it's from a Black Angus cow, right? Ta-da. Okay.
Yummy.
So, honestly, guys, that is the most valuable piece on the animal right here. Okay? Why? It's the most tender. Okay? It's the heaviest piece other than the leg. Okay? that's going to give you the most yield. Okay, because I mean, honestly, look how much this whole carcass cost $180. Right? So out of $180, that's going in the garbage. So that cost me, like $22 a pound to line the garbage can. You know what I mean? So we want to make sure that we get every possible bit off of here that we can, to maximize our yield and to maximize our potential profit.
Would you make more money than what you paid for?
That's the goal.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. This. A rack of lamb. Think about it, you go to a restaurant, a rack of lamb for one person, okay? Could be upwards in a decent restaurant, could be upwards of $45. And that might only be for a 4-bone rack. And we have 8 ribs, so, I'm only gonna get 4 orders out of each carcass, right? So, then you have to think about the labor that goes into fabricating out a piece like this. Can you do it? So you're paying me to do it. So not only am I charging you for the product, but I'm charging you anytime I have to put a knife to a piece of meat, your price automatically goes up anywhere between 10 to 15 to sometimes even 20% per pound, right? So, because I can take that off and maximize the yield probably a lot more efficiently, quickly, and consistently than somebody who isn't trained, right? So that's why we don't see a lot of butchering happen in a lot of restaurants and hotels anymore. A lot of it's done at the processing plants. Because if you order a rack of lamb from your distributor, you're going to get 100% yield. Might cost you $32 per rack, right? But you're going to get 100% yield out of that. And you can charge $65 to $75 for that rack. You know what I mean? Now, it's not going to be a huge profit, but it does add to what you're making. Okay? Answer your question? Okay. All right, I gotta post it.
See if this works.
Come on up. I mean,
Why do you look like a bitch?
Well, yeah, why did... You want to be right here?
You don't have to squat.
How long did it take you to get really good at fabricating the lamps?
Couple hundred years, 500 years.
He's got a knife in his hand, Titus.
Like he's very good.
Okay, so you see right there. Let me see how it's moving. Okay, so that's where we're going to come in and open up that ball and socket joint right there. So we're going to cut that, what's it called? The rotator cuff. Okay, so anybody ever tear their rotator cuff in their shoulder? Don't, because it's really painful. Okay, I'm going to show you. It's a little tendon that holds. So you got that ball and socket joint, right? So the rotator cuff is that little tendon that holds that ball to the socket. Okay, and if you hyperextend it, you know, whatever, and that tears. Oh, so a little fun story. My daughter, during a tournament, did that to some boy. She had him in an arm bar, and he wouldn't tap out because he wasn't going to lose to some girl. And so she looked at me and she had him and she was leaning back and I said, okay, you know,
So over the
and
hill.
she just leaned back a little more and all you heard was,
And then he screamed like a little girl?
yeah, yeah, he did, yeah. And I mean, Grace felt bad for about 6-7 seconds, you know. So yeah, you know, good times. Okay, so
Is
but
that the proudest you've ever been, Chef?
no, when she finally broke her bricks, she was supposed to break 2 cinder blocks to get her 2nd degree. She went through 5. So that was, I mean, she struggled with it for quite a while. And she finally got the 2 during practice. And then the day of the test, her instructor looked at me, he asked me, he goes, can I add more? Without telling her. I was like, go for it. So he put 5 up. And she came down and she walked off like a boss, man. She, you know, she did a great job. You know? I told you got to unleash your inner culinary gangster, man. I want my culinary ninjas team, you know. All right, so right there you can see that in there. You can see that shiny little bit right there. That is. Okay, you see that?
I'll pull a Grace.
And what I was talking about earlier, see how, you know, it's very, very thick, closer to the bone, right? So we cut that.
Sweep the leg, Johnny.
You know, like Johnny has to take that dude's knee out.
Sweep the leg.
I don't think he's gonna do it again.
All right, right there. See that? Looks kind of like a rubber band. Okay, that is what's holding that together. So right in there. Okay. There's our other meat. We're not throwing that out. Right. Okay. Oh, let's get the tenderloin out. That piece right there, that's your beef tenderloin. That's your tenderloin. Okay? That's where we get filet mignon from.
Not on a cow. Not on a cow. Oh. You know?
Yeah, no. Same exact.
Yeah. She said it's tiny, and I said it's not tiny on a cow.
No. Now, in the right hands, this piece right here, this one little piece right here, prepared properly, consistently and accurately, and with a lot of plate appeal, can pay for the entire carcass. Just that one piece. Okay. Yeah. So you make. You've heard of beef Wellington? Okay. So you used to make lamb Wellington. So I would take these, fab them out, sear them, coat them in mushroom duxelle, then layer it with foie gras, which is duck liver. Then I would wrap that in prosciutto, and then roll that into puff pastry, and sell one of these. Take a guess how much?
$23.
No.
$257.
$225.
Holy that.
That's a lot, though, because you're paying for foie gras as well and everything else.
So $225. Now, do I get any sides with that? No, you do not. Your sides cost more. What about my taters? Okay, one baked potato, $15. Okay. How did you sleep at night? On a big pile of money. Okay, so now you've had gyros, right? Yeah. No, have you ever had gyros? Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, gyros.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's called a gyro? Yes. I swore it was a gyro. All right, so that's what we do. I would have a BRT roast. Boned, rolled, and tied, BRT. All right, so then I would open this up. And again, I'm going to come down that leg, that bone.
At that point, is it Frenching the bone?
Well, what I'm doing is called Frenching, but typically what I would do is I would cut this tendon, the Achilles tendon off. I would remove the break joint here, and then I would take the shank bone from like here to here and scrape it and clean it up and get that really, really nice bone, kind of like when we made our airline chicken breast. Okay, so same exact thing right there. Okay.
Chef's favorite sound in the whole world.
One of them.
Versus bone.
What? So we got that knee right there. Come in. Get in there. Let's see where we got it.
Tunnel chicken.
Almost, yes.
Or chicken thigh, like in thigh we do.
Yep. There we go. And you got to be really, really careful when you're working at a joint like that, okay? Because when you crack your knuckles, right? You've got little pockets in between your bones. And those little pockets have little discs in there of a really sticky kind of fluid called synovial fluid. And when you're cracking your knuckles, what you're doing is you're moving those discs out of the way, and then what you hear is that bone on bone, right? Okay, but on an animal, those little discs, those little pockets, can be much heavier, right? So synovial fluid in there is going to be much thicker, right? And you kind of see when I pull my finger, right? You can barely see it, right? That's the synovial fluid, and it gets really, really slippery. That's what's going to help lubricate those joints. And if you're working, and you move too fast, really cause some serious damage to yourself. Okay, so now I'm trying to be a little more careful because I want to leave that bone intact. Okay. So you can get that roast leg of lamb. So we've got a boneless leg of lamb right there. Okay, I leave that bone in. I'm take this piece off. Really don't want to eat that. It's a tendon, the Achilles tendon, right? But then I would take my saw, I would cut this piece off, and come about here. Here. I'm not going to take the time to do that right now, just because. But then I would clean this bone up. That's called Frenching the bone.
What's the difference in Frenching and machine?
Mâcher is to cut the tip of the bone off. So if I were going to mâcher this, I would take the cartilage tip off. Okay, but then Frenching the bone is cleaning the bone of all tissue. So we were just exposing the bone itself, that's it. And we do that just for presentation purposes. So, I figure you got that whole thing cleaned up. Oh, you know what? We're gonna do it, let's do it, right? Now, I could probably do it just like I did the chicken leg. Just take my cleaver and pop it off. But this bone's a little more developed, so it's going to have a greater potential for splintering if I did it like that. So that's why, if I were in the butcher shop, this would just go right across the bandsaw, cut that. Julia's like, he can't do that. Okay. So, and what we would do with this, we'd open it up a little bit more. Remember earlier I was talking about subprimal cuts, right? So, out of the primal cut round or leg, I have 5 subprimal cuts. Okay. I have the eye of the round, which is right here. I have the top round. I have the bottom round. I have the heel, and I have the knuckle. Right? So, you know, knowing how to cut those out, you can get different portions out of that particular cut. Right? So, we would open it up, maybe take some herb, like fresh thyme, fresh rosemary, maybe some shallots, some leeks.
Matignon.
We could add a matignon to it, yeah. Okay.
So the knuckle and the heel you don't see on a menu.
Typically, no. That's going to be used for grinding. Yeah. Okay.
I did it.
You did it, Titus.
It's for you.
Very own Achilles tendon. Guys, what he's doing is is trussing, and it's a very particular type of knot that you're going to want to learn how to do.
Okay. And we get everything.
Did that with an oatmeal container once. Remember that?
Yeah. So then we would just continue to take it and come around. So you can take this, take Tristan, tie him up, throw him in the trunk, drive away, leave his car at long-term parking at the airport, and I don't know, he just ran away.
Sounds like this Saturday.
Well, that's a bone rolled and tied, so your definition of a good Saturday is bone rolled and tied, then there you go, I guess so. Bit weird, but okay. All right, so we're gonna have to break down and get everything cleaned up. Anybody have any questions? I know it's kind of fast and furious, and I kind of get into the zone when I start cutting meat, and I don't talk as much as I probably should.